Tu as nyanga mis mon cœur comme ça là, c'est fini. Tu as nyanga mis mon cœur comme ça là, c'est foutu. Ambife, mbife. Oh, mbife, mbife. Ambife, mbife. Yo wanana nga. Oh, mbife, mbife. Oh, yo na pesaka motema di. Ambife, mbife. Mbife, je t'aime. Oh, mbife, mbife. Mbife, mbife, mbife. Ambife, mbife. Yo nena chaka motema. Oh, mbife, mbife. Oh, mbife, mbife. Oh, mbife. Awayo kamati motema nanga Gakola kosala nini pona mona yo Yo ne wanga wapusako bundela ye Yo ne wanga ya motema Nalingi yo Nakangi yango na miso ya
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session where you're going to learn about cotton-top tamarins and dholes. It's my pleasure to introduce Rosamira Guillen, my longtime friend. Some of you may not know that Rosamira is a landscape architect by training, and today she's the executive director of Poyecto Tití, which is dedicated to the conservation of cotton-top tamarins in Colombia. She's a Fulbright scholar and the winner of the prestigious Whitley Award, and most recently, the winner of the National Geographic Buffett Award for leadership in Latin American conservation. With Rosamira today is Johanna Vega, who's a psychologist by training and the former head of education programs at Poyecto Tití. She's now their director of operations and is in charge of all of their public outreach and communications and education programs. And it was under Joanna's tenure that Poyecto Tití's Cartilla program became part of the national environmental education curriculum in Colombia. Please welcome Rosamira.
Very much, Joyce. So imagine you're on an island. In this island surrounded by water, you're there with your family, your parents, your siblings, and some of the, thank you, Becca, some of your relatives, and you're okay there in that island. You have what you need. You have food, you have shelter, but then you realize there is another island in front of you, and the folks there seem to be having a good time. There's quite, cute individuals there. You're young and single, and you want to get there to, maybe find a good partner to make your own family and have your own island and your own territory. But then again, you're surrounded by water. You don't have a boat. You don't know how to swim. And you don't dare get into the water because there's hungry creatures there that might want to have you for lunch or dinner. And this is exactly what happened to Sherry. Sherry was a beautiful cotton-top tamarin female that was born in one of the families we study in the wild of the cotton-top tamarins. She was born in the home of Tamara and Ray, and she grew very healthy with her siblings in her home territory within the forest. However, when she became a juvenile, Sherry was basically kicked out of her family. She was very shy, so she had a lot of trouble leaving her family. And it's not like her mom was anything evil or anything. It is just that that's what cotton-top tamarins do. And when you think about it, that's what we do as well. When we're teenagers and 18 years old, you leave home. You either leave home or you're kicked out of your house. But Sherry had a very hard time leaving home because her, territory used to be this beautiful green blanket, spongy blanket that covered the whole northern region of Colombia, which is the only place on earth where cotton-top tamarins are found. You don't find them anywhere else, even in the world or in Colombia, only that black spot that you see on the map. But unfortunately, that green blanket that covered the whole region of Colombia has become a quilt. And this quilt is made up of patches, some patches of forest, some patches of cattle ranching, some patches of agricultural fields, thanks to human development, and it's making very hard for Sherry and for other cotton tops to get to the other islands where they might be able to find good partners to make their own families. And that has become a challenge for cotton-top tamarins. And they usually hang up only up in the trees. They never come down to the ground because there's raptor birds that fly, there's small mammals that are in the ground, and there's boa snakes that love to have cotton-top tamarins for lunch and for dinner. And then, even though they can take a pretty big jump, cotton-top tamarins don't, it's too far away to make it into those gaps. So they basically get bound within a forest island and find it very hard to go into other islands to create families. Eventually, Sherry was taken up by another family, but because she was so shy and very soft, she wasn't able to become the dominant female of a family group and have her own children in her own territory. And this is part of the big challenge that the monkeys are facing in Colombia. Forest loss and forest fragmentation is the main threat for the survival of cotton-top tamarins. The forest is only reduced to 2% of what it used to be in that beautiful green blanket you saw on the previous slide. And whatever's left is made out of islands of forest that seclude cotton tops into these little islands all over the north region of Colombia. And that is the reason why our work at Poyecto Tití is very much focused on rebuilding this forest for cotton-top tamarin, and not only rebuilding it, but connecting the forest patches that are left so the monkeys can circulate and find and mix and find new families. It may take only a day to cut an acre of forest, but it's probably we're gonna have to wait 10 to 15 years to see this forest grow if we plant it again. And not only that, but it is probably gonna take 20 to 25 years for this forest to be completely mature. So rebuilding forest, it's a huge challenge, and it requires time, patience, lots of staff, lots of trees, and lots of people involved in making this happen. But that's what we do. We're not ready to give up. We truly believe that there's hope and that there's enough forest that we can save, connect, and make sure that these cute little monkeys make it into the long term. But the great thing is that cotton tops are our focus species, but when you save the forest for these little monkeys, you're saving the forest for a large number of animals that share a home with the little monkeys. Primates and other mammals and birds and reptiles and snakes and all sorts of different bugs and plants. So saving the monkeys, saving the forest for the monkeys, is helping us save the forest for many other wildlife in Colombia. And not only that, but the forest that is home to the monkeys, it's a great climate regulator. So it helps us keep temperature and climate change in control, basically. And also, it provides resources to us humans, if it's well managed. But more than anything, forests are sponges for water. And let's think about what would be a day for us without water. Water is very important for us humans, and we all value water. So when we make all of this reflection, what is good, the forest that is good for cotton-top tamarins is very good for humans as well. So we are providing a future for a cute little monkey, for wildlife, and it's for our own welfare. And this is the message we work in getting across to the communities and to the people that we work with in Colombia. Yeah, the monkeys are cute. They're the cutest monkey in the world. They're very important. They have a very important ecological role. But the forest we save for the monkeys is a forest that saves us as well, and is going to provide welfare to human communities. So we have been very creative to get this done. So, by the way, thanks to WCN last year, we were able to double the size of our forest reserve that we created to protect the monkeys. So many of you, I know, participated in our matching gift for making this possible, and we're about to complete the negotiation, and this is going to be it's going to be about 500 acres of forest that we're adding to the National Reserve that protects cotton-top tamarins. And also, by working with the environmental authorities in Colombia, we have been able to secure 5,000 additional acres of land that is going to be turned into forests for the monkeys as well. But these protected areas, both private and public, need to be connected. They're islands right now, islands of forest that are apart from each other. Then those monkeys that are in these protected areas, in the long term, might be at stake. So these red lines that you see on the map is part of our plan to get these forest islands connected in between, and be able to secure that these monkeys like Sherry, can move around as they need to find new families and to find new territories. But when you analyze this map here, in between these protected areas, we have farmers. We have people that own land, and we have people that work the land for cattle ranching or for agriculture. And we would love to be able to buy the whole thing, and just protect it for the monkeys, for wildlife, for people, but it's probably unrealistic. So this is why our approach to farmers is, like Mr. Alberto here, is like, okay, well, why don't we work together through conservation agreements, which is what we're proposing them. So these are people that are, have owned the land, but usually don't have resources to invest to increase their productivity. So we make a deal with them, basically, and we call it a conservation agreement. So we help them increase the productivity on their land. So we give them seeds, we give them hens, we give them fruit trees, and by that they, produce more for their own, food and for selling. And in turn, they set aside part of their land for connecting these forest patches. So we work with Mr. Alberto and his neighbors, and then we connect one piece with another, and then we make big corridors that are, looking to connect these forest patches. And we at Poyecto Tití have been studying cotton tops for almost 30 years. We know a lot about monkeys, We know a lot about what they eat, and all of that knowledge now we can put into practice by understanding what is it that they eat. We know what trees they feed from, we know what trees they sleep on, and we know we have enough information that we can try to replicate this forest and try to rebuild this forest for the monkeys. So that's what we're doing, exactly. We're waiting for the trees that they use for food and for shelter, and as soon as the seeds come out, we collect seeds from local sources, we plant them on our community nursery, and we work with the farmers to care for these little seedlings, and as soon as they're above 1 foot, right, 30 centimeters, then we go ahead and plant them in these corridor areas. And these corridor areas are fenced with our worldwide famous Tití posts, which are posts made with recycled plastic that is collected from the local communities and turned into fence posts that avoid having to cut trees to make fences when we're trying to save forest. So we come in the rainy season and we plant all these trees that we grow in the nursery that are all very valuable for cotton-top tamarins. And we watch them grow. We monitor their growth with the help of the farmers. And we keep track of a big sample of those trees that are growing in the forest to give a home to cotton-top tamarins for this. And again, this is no easy task. We're going to have to be very patient. We're going to have to do a lot of field work monitoring these trees, and we're going to have to wait at least 10 years for these trees to grow and monitor cotton tops using this. But we're starting to see progress on that. Now, all of this effort wouldn't be worth if we don't have communities committed to conserving this forest and conserving these protected areas. So I'm going to turn it over to Johanna, and she's going to tell you how we're doing this with our local communities.
Thank you, Rosamira. Yes, restoration is one part of the work of conservation for cotton-top tamarins, but the other part is working with the communities that surround the forest, that live very close from the forest of cotton-top tamarins. And working with people is what, passionate me, because I am a psychologist and I love working with people, and I truly believe that this is an important part to reduce their impact, their current impact and their future impact on that forest that we are trying to restore. Living very close to the forest means everything for them, because it's where they grow their things they eat, where they collect the water they need. And, for these farmers from San Juan, they need to get some papayas or some kilos of yuca and walk for 1 or 2 hours to sell them in the main town. They just make a couple of dollars, and with this they buy food or they pay their bills, but it's not enough. So they come back to the forest, cut down trees, hunt some monkeys to sell, so they can make a living for their families. Farmers and these communities are in survival mode the whole time. They don't dream big. They don't plan for the future, because they need to work for food, just for food. And in this context, ecomochilas were born 16 years ago. We tried to create a better way of living, a way of dream and looking to the future with this project. So we did. Look the shapes, the colors, and the patterns of these ecomochilas 16 years ago. Well, they evolved. Now they are not only selling ecomochilas, but also these beautiful plush toys. And by the way, if you haven't stopped by to our table, you need to go, because we have little Tití Santas for selling. They are going to be great in your Christmas tree. But they went beyond that. They improved the shapes, the patterns, and colors of these ecomochilas, as you can see. They are working hard with designers in the cities to put them on shelves, and they sell very well all over the country. But behind each ecomochila, there is a story of a powerful woman, a story of a family, of somebody that is making more than survive with these ecomochilas. And let me tell you some of these stories. I can't tell them all, but this one I love. This is Keren. Keren is Angelica's daughter. Angelica is one of the first artisans that started the project 16 years ago, when Keren was just 6 years old. The first 6 years of her life, she couldn't be with her mom because her mom had to work in Cartagena cleaning houses, and they just allowed to come back to visit Keren for 1 or 2 weekends per month. So the first 6 years of her life, she couldn't be with her mom. But now Keren and Angelica are artisans. They are not away from home anymore because now they can make a living of the camochilas. And you know what is Keren doing there? It's a diaper bag for a special client that is also pregnant. As you can see, Keren is pregnant now, and she's about to have her baby in 2 weeks. So with the money of this diaper bag, she's going to be able to buy what she needs for her baby. And this is Angelica, Keren's mom. In this picture, she is showing off the washing machine, and this is a huge thing for her, because if you only have money for food and paying bills, you can purchase these kind of things. And for her, it's so important because now she is committed to watching her grandkids grow and taking care of them now that it's possible to be in the communities. Now they don't need to go to the cities for cleaning houses because they have their own business. And of course, having a washing machine is very convenient to sit down and watch some telenovelas, you know. This is Kelly. Kelly asked me to take this picture because she's so proud of this beautiful house she built with the Camochilas money. Everybody in the house is so happy to be here. Even the little puppies, as you can see, all of them are thrilled to have a nice place to live. This is how Kelly's house used to look a few years ago. But with the money she gathered with her job, she could make a better house for their family. Sylvia has a similar story because she is building her house with Camochilas money. And what you see is all what she got. It's just that room. But what she did was smart. With the money of the Camochilas, she bought this fridge. And now she has 2 businesses. 1, the Camochilas, and 2, she is selling food products for their neighbors. So with these 2 businesses, she's going to end her house. She already bought the backyard, so she has the land, and now she needs to keep working to build the rest. This particular story touched me deeply. Isabel is a survivor of cancer. In these communities, if you don't have money to pay the public transportation or the medicine, you don't survive of a thing like this. And you know, it's just something hard to get through. But Isabel worked with these Camochilas and gathered the money for paying her treatment. And also she told me that doing Camochilas was part of her treatment because it's relaxing. It's a fun, relaxing activity. So, and it's very rewarding because she's gathered the money she needs for herself. So as you can see, each Camochila you buy is not only a beautiful, nice eco product, it's a story. It's a story that maybe is saving somebody's life. But let me tell you something about life. This is the next generation of adults of these communities, and we are working together with the women in raising these kids, because now they are at home, they don't need to clean houses outside the community, so they are raising their kids. We teach them to teach their kids how to take care of cotton-top tamarins and the forest. But we also got these amazing environmental education programs from elementary school to vocational school. And we got some nice stories behind it, too. As part of the program, they go to the forest, they know the cotton-tops for the first time, and this is very important because they make a real connection, and they really understand why we need to live in harmony with nature, with cotton-tops and their forests, as we have proved in the past. This is a real life-changing experience. Like Nelson. Maybe some of you remember Nelson. He started since very young in these programs, and we helped them to graduate from vocational school, and now is an educator in one of the most important zoos in Colombia. He's not only spreading the message, but also he is a role model for the kids in these communities that now know that dreams can come true. And this is another really nice story. This is Rosa. She used to be my student 5 years ago, and now she's my colleague. She's my coworker. She's one of our educators. And, I feel so proud because Rosa is growing emotionally, intellectually, without losing her style, as you can see. And this is another mighty girl. This is Rubiela. Rubiela is one of the most recent students, and she is going to be with me this December in an international conference in Bogota, talking about how she is helping cotton-top tamarins and how to be a young conservationist. She's so happy about, of course, it's a great opportunity, but also she said this is a great gift because just the day before the talk, she graduates from high school. So, conservationists, sometimes we think that we need to do more, that what we are doing is not enough. But changing an entire generation takes time. We can't do that all at once. What we have learned these years is that changing one behavior in one person, changing one family, makes a huge difference because they help to change the minds of their neighbors, and who knows, maybe the entire community. So these are the stories that make me keep going in this job, that makes me keep working in conservation, and really, really wanted to keep saving cotton-top tamarins and their forest home from extinction. So I hope these stories inspired and motivates you too. Thank you so much.
Just one closing line. So I want to close with this video just to let you know that when you support our restoration work, you support the life of these monkeys, the life of wildlife in Colombia, and the life of people in Colombia. And when you buy a plush toy, or when you buy an ecomochila, you're not buying only a product. You're helping somebody make a living. You're supporting an opportunity to get involved in conservation and to make a decent living for human welfare. So what's good for monkeys is good for us humans. Thank you very much.
We've got a couple minutes for questions for Rosamira and Johanna. Any questions? Got one right here.
So I saw a theme about making local products that can be sold internationally. And I think it's really important to kind of be mindful of the purchases that we're making every day in our lives. And I'm really happy that you brought that up. How are you expanding on that with other retailers internationally, or are you doing that on a larger scale?
I can answer that. Yes, this project has been running, like Johanna mentioned, for 16 years, and we have learned a lot about, throughout this process, and many challenges, but many opportunities as well. But what taught us to keep a right scale of the product was the dynamics of the market. So the beginning, when this making eco mochilas with recycled plastic bags, had a peak, and we had a lot of people involved in producing. But then, of course, it changed, like the market changes. So we adjusted to that, and we, for the last 6 to 8 years, we have kept a stable group of about 50 artisans that make plush toys and eco mochilas. And we have found very good partners, both nationwide and internationally, that keep purchasing these products for keeping this group of people engaged and involved in conservation. So marketing has never been our strength, but we have learned along the way, and we're very lucky to count on all of you. When we bring these products, you are aware that you're supporting a very important conservation work in Colombia. But we still, keep learning and trying to come up with ideas that can fit the market and that can adjust to that, benefiting communities and cotton-top tamarins.
One question up here in the front.
What impact will a growing population have on your reforestation efforts in the future?
Yes, we have always been quite concerned about that, especially, some of you might know the history of Colombia with the political instability for many, many decades. And that is over because of the peace process that we conducted for the last 4 years, and it came into place last year. Ironically, this conflict kept pristine many areas in northern Colombia that are, safe for all Colombia, safe for wildlife, and they are very much at risk of, we now can come in and work in these areas, but also companies can come and do their, activities. So we're relying on the partnerships that we have created with the National Park Service, with the environmental authorities, with other environmental NGOs working in the areas where we do our conservation work in Colombia, and more than anything, on the farmers. The farmers are the key element in all of this. And as long as they see the benefit of saving the forest, because now they can have water for their crops during the dry season, because now they have food for their families and for sale, we know they're going to continue to stay engaged, just as the Eco Mochila ladies and the plush ladies have been engaged for over 15 years with this project. The conservation agreements we make are volunteer, but we take the effort of monitoring that every year and making sure that they comply by that, and then they can see the benefits of that. So we really trust that as long as you see the benefit, then you're more willing to keep your commitment because you are benefiting directly from this. It's not an utopic idea of saving a monkey or saving a forest for the sake of it. It's just that my life depends on it as well. So we're trusting that concept, and we invest a lot of effort in evaluating and monitoring everything we do just to make sure that it complies. So far, we've been very successful, and 100% of the agreements have been kept over the last 4 years that we started this conservation work. And we are, we believe that it can stay like that as we expand and grow this network of forest corridors in northern Colombia.
Yeah, this process is key to make them understand why they are doing this. It's not only because of the seeds it's because of that too, but in order to make them understand, we need to educate them. That's why we truly believe in education and educate the communities, because if we do that, they are going to be willing to take care even if we are not there. Actually, some of them are volunteer for expand their corridors. We haven't asked them to do this, but now they understand the dynamic and they understand why, and they are willing to take care more about nature.
Thank you so much, Rosamira and Joanna.
Thank you.
Please go visit their table, which is right outside this door, and buy a plush toy or an eco-mochila. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Arjun Srivathsa of WCS India, where he works on Dhole conservation in the Western Ghats. Arjun is originally from Bangalore, and today he's pursuing his PhD at the University of Florida. He's also a former WCN scholarship recipient. He's also an artist and cartoonist by hobby, and he uses his art in his conservation outreach. Arjun Srivathsa.
So good afternoon, everyone. I'm super thrilled to be here. This is my first time at a WCN Expo. This is my first time in California, so thank you very much. Like Joy said, my name is Arjun Srivathsa. I am from Wildlife Conservation Society in India, and I'm very, very excited so that I can take you on a journey to my country. Are you all excited? Yes. Louder. Yes. There you go. So when I say India, what do you think about? Probably you think about the culture. Perhaps you also think about the colors and the Taj Mahal, right? You also probably think of the chicken curry. But do you think of carnivores? Probably not. Even if you do, maybe it's the tiger that you think of. But that's an easy give. I mean, you think India, you think tigers, okay. But we have the snow leopard up in the Himalayas. In the western forests, we have the Asiatic lion. Down in the grasslands and the plains, we have the Indian wolf. In the dry forests, we have the sloth bear. And in the wet forests of the south, we have the highly endemic Nilgiri marten. In fact, we have 23% of the world's carnivores on 2.3% of the global land area in India. And what's super fascinating is that they share space with 1.3 billion people. This is amazing. You don't see this in any other country, which is what makes India very unique. And out of these amazing carnivores that we have in India, the diversity of carnivores, the one that I'm most excited about, what fascinates me the most, is the Asiatic wild dog, or the dhole. If you've heard about it, that's great. If you've only read its name, it's not pronounced D-holes. Thank you. So this dog is actually a wild species. It's not a domestic dog that ran off to the forest. There's a lot of misconception about that. It's the size of your German Shepherd, perhaps, slightly smaller. The dhole lives in packs, these groups of 2 to 25 individuals. They live in dense forests. And you know how they communicate with each other? They whistle to each other. That's right, they whistle through their noses. And this is why they're also called the whistling dogs, or the red dogs, because of their color. They're also top predators in areas where they occur. They're on top of the food chain, so they play a very important ecological role as well. And this is what their global geographic range looks like. They're mostly found in South and Southeast Asia. Dholes have had a bit of a reputation issue for a very long time. I guess most of you know Rudyard Kipling from The Jungle Book, and he was not a big fan either. See the words he uses to describe the dhole in the second Jungle Book. Hate, triumph, fear, despair. Not so nice. But this is not just him. In fact, British colonial hunters back in the early 1900s also shared this sort of emotion. This is Fythian Adams writing in his journal, and this is what he says. Except for his handsome appearance, the wild dog has not a single redeeming feature. By wild dog, he's referring to the dhole. And no effort, fair or foul, should be spared to destroy these pests of the jungle. That's what he said. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the face of the pest of the jungle. There's no justice there. In India, where we think that the largest populations of dholes exist right now, this is what their distribution range looks like. They mostly occur in 3 landscapes: the Western Ghats in the south, the central Indian forests, and the forests of northeast India. And right now, I'm going to take you to the Western Ghats in southern India, where I work. It's a lovely landscape. The large swathes of forests, and it's a mountain range that runs through the southwestern part of my country. It's a place where a lot of rivers originate, so it's a lifeline for a lot of animals and people alike. It's a gorgeous landscape. About 8 years ago, I was walking around in these forests, surveying large herbivores like elephants and deer. We were walking along a path. When I say we, it was me and this one volunteer who was walking with me to do surveys of large herbivores. While on this path in the middle of the forest, this random animal starts coming straight running towards us. Both of us stopped in our path and waited until this reddish, weird little thing comes all the way very, very close. It came to about 6 feet away from us, stopped, and looked at us and gave a little grunt. It was a dhole. I had a question mark on my face. Like, what are you doing? And it mirrored on the dhole's face. It was like, what are you doing here? It's like both of us were confused. So I was just signaling to the volunteers, like, no, hold on, like, let's see what it does. And as fast as it had come, it just gently turned around and started walking back on the path. And then we observed it for a while, and it went back, and then we saw there was another pack member at the back. And I don't know what communication the two of them had, and then both of them stared at us for about like 2-3 seconds, and then they jumped off into the shrub. Then the second one went, and then the third one went, and then the fourth one went, all while looking at us, while their tails went bobbing behind them. I guess it was that moment that I realized that this is the species. This is what I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to understand and conserve. And that was the most powerful moment in my life as a wildlife biologist until today. So this video gives you a glimpse of what it's like to see a pack of dholes in the wild. This was during my master's project about 6 years ago. What you can see is a pack of 8 dholes that have killed a spotted deer in the forests of Western Ghats, and they're eating it while they also at the same time notice that there are some of us, and they're very, very shy. So they're trying to run away but also eat at the same time. So as you saw, you only get fleeting glimpses of this animal. It's not like in Africa where you can just spend hours observing the animal. It's very difficult. As exciting as it is to observe the dhole in the wild, moments like these are very few and far between. So most of the time, what we do get to see are telltale signs of the dhole's presence. They poop, and they leave tracks. And using this information, we're able to tell what areas they occupy and what areas they don't. So this is my home state of Karnataka in light blue. That's in the Western Ghats. And the dark green is basically the forested area, and the black lines that you see are the protected areas. So we did a survey across this entire landscape to figure out where dholes are found and where they're not. And what was really shocking was that this ideal habitat for the dhole, in 2015, only about 50% of the area is occupied by the dhole. And this, mind you, is one of the best habitats. So we're not doing really well if in the best habitats, they only occupy about 50% of the area, right? But what else did we find from this research? We found out that the prey species were very, very important for the dhole. Prey species like the spotted deer, the sambar deer, gaur, which is in the Indian version of the African buffalo, The males grow really large. They can weigh up to a ton. Then you have the small barking deer, which is about the same size as the dhole, and then the wild pig. These were very important. But out of these, we found that dholes really liked the cheetal, or the spotted deer. In places where there's no cheetal, they will settle in for the sambar deer. And that was also an interesting finding, because cheetal are not found everywhere. Aside from the prey, forested landscapes were extremely important for dholes. We found out that they were very, very sensitive to forest cover. Having protected areas that protect these forest habitats were extremely important. And these landscapes also, if you have 1.3 billion people in the country, it also means that these forests have a lot of human activity, a lot of livestock activity. And dholes generally avoided people and livestock. These are basically the dhole is basically a species that requires intact forests that's free of human presence. So this was one slice of its life. We figured out where they're found and why they're found. But what we also figured out was that they share space with some other interesting animals. They share space with the tiger, and they also share space with the leopard. So these three species are all top carnivores, right? So how do they interact with each other? What do? They fight like cats and dogs. Surprise. So here you can see the dhole chasing a leopard up a tree, and on the other picture, a tiger chasing a leopard up a tree. In fact, the tiger can be a bit of a you-know-what. So sometimes you see that the tiger can kill a leopard. The tiger also kills the dhole. So, but how do the three species then manage to survive in the same areas? How are they doing this? So we put up camera traps. That is me. A couple of years ago, and a couple of kilos lighter, but that's still me. So we put up camera traps to see what areas and at what time activity patterns that these animals are active. So we get some information on how they manage to live alongside each other. Because they all eat the same things. They all go for the same prey species. But what we did find was that they all carefully avoid each other in time and in space, or in both, depending on which park they are in, and depending on how much prey is available. So they're doing this strange balancing act where all three of them are able to survive alongside each other while still hating each other. Maybe a lesson to learn for all of us at this political climate as well, right? So that was another insight about the dhole ecology that we found. The other issue with dholes is that they all look alike. In this picture, you can see the two of them, they look pretty much the same. In fact, if you see a pack of 8, 10, 14, they all almost look the same. So it's very difficult for us as conservation biologists or wildlife biologists if you cannot identify the animal, because that's the way you count, and anything you want to do, the most powerful thing is that you should be able to individually identify these animals, right? But we couldn't do this with the dhole. But thanks to our camera trapping efforts, again, that's me, we found these two individuals in a pack of 5. We named the one on the left the white sock, because she seemed to have a white sock, and the one on the left with the yellow circle as Scar, because he had an injury mark on him. Using these uniquely identified individuals, which were a part of a pack of 5 individuals, for the very first time we were able to map their entire home range in Dhole National Park in the Western Ghats. This was the first time ever that camera traps were used to, usually you use radio telemetry, right? You put collars on them. But this was the first time we used camera trapping as a tool to map the home range of the species. And we were able to show that about 85 square kilometers is the area that a pack of about 5 to 8 animals requires. And that was a huge learning for us. So all of this is great. So we learned something about the dhole. We know a little bit more now than we did before. That's great. So, but what's the issue? The issue is that the dhole is one of the most endangered species on Earth. The IUCN Red List categorizes them as an endangered species. We think that there may be about 1,000 to 2,000 of them left in the world. The adult mature dholes, because they are only the alpha pair in every pack reproduce, the rest of the animals don't. So effectively, there are maybe 1,000 to 2,000 of them left. And that's problematic. From the global perspective, this is what their former range looked like. They were found from Russia down to Central Asia, South Asia, all the way down to Southeast Asia. And right now, this is what we think their range is. They've gone extinct from about 80% of their former range, showing the drastic decline in their global geographic range. So within India, where I work, why is this an issue? I already spoke about how protected areas were very important for those. Protected areas in India cover about 5% of our total land area. So what? Then what about outside protected areas? Our recent research shows that in just the past decade, this is my landscape again, in the Western Ghats, they've gone extinct locally from 38% of the area where they once occupied in 2007. So this is just in a span of 8 years. And as you can see, the higher the red, the more red the map is, it means that those are the areas where they've most likely gone extinct. And these are all in areas outside the protected areas, right? These are all outside these reserves. So why are they going extinct in these places? The first issue is massive economic development and therefore land use change in the form of mines. Second, there are roads that traverse through these areas as well. So there's a lot of road kills, so vehicles directly hitting dholes that are moving across these landscapes, and therefore. Then we also have the hydropowers that are coming up everywhere. These projects have become very prolific. They're being floated as green energy projects, so they don't require the same level of environmental impact assessment scrutiny as most other projects. So they're really fragmenting the entire landscape. And somewhat of a latent hidden threat might be also with the problem with feral dogs and diseases. So India has about 30 million free-ranging, unowned, stray feral dogs. And because dholes are dogs themselves, in some sense, they're very social. They do interact with these dogs in areas where they both overlap. And it's likely that they're contracting diseases from them, like rabies, canine distemper virus, and a host of diseases that we have learned from other canid species and other carnivores. But there's no research about this at all, so we know very little about how this interaction works out, how they're actually threatening the dhole, and what kind of disease dynamics sort of controls this entire equation between the feral dog and wild dog. So it really becomes a question mark in all of us who are trying to conserve the species, which probably I think is about 5 of us right now. It's a big crowd. Because we want to try and see if we can keep some habitats aside for the dhole so that it can survive. And also in areas that are not forests, like a tea estate over here, and probably some other similar landscapes like coffee estates, perhaps, coffee plantations, tea. These are subsidiary habitats, so they're almost forest-like because they have tree cover and very less human movement. Those can probably survive over here as well. The idea is to figure out how we can consolidate these areas for the dhole so that moving into the next century, we can conserve the species. So because of all of these issues that the dhole faces, I launched the Dhole project back in 2016. So the first part of it is part of my PhD as well at the University of Florida, but the idea is to expand beyond. So what is the Dhole project about? It's to first look at science, because you've heard many talks today. Everybody talks about how crazy, amazing it is to do the science, because it's important, yes, but as scientists, it also gives us a little bit of a quick kick, like you can do this, publish that paper, you can do this, you go up that ivory tower. So what do we need to do? We need to figure out how many dholes there are. We still don't know. The 1,000 to 2,000 that I spoke about are guesstimates. They're not real numbers. So we need genetic studies to use their poop and their DNA to figure out how many there are. We need to put up camera traps to figure out what areas are useful for them, what areas they don't occupy. We need to put in collars on them so that we can understand their behavior and also their interactions with feral dogs so that we can figure out what kind of disease risks they face because of the interactions with these dogs. Translating that we need to also sort of fit that into conservation in terms of assessing the global status. I work closely with the IUCN Canid Specialist Group and the Dhole Working Group. We still have very little idea. I mean, I spoke a lot about India, but we have even lesser knowledge about this Dhole in the other countries where they occur. So right now, it's all about strategizing, figuring out priority locations, where do we need to invest our resources and energy. Also bring out policy change, because currently there are no policies to conserve the dhole and in any of the countries across its range, and that's really problematic. And then the final thing is also funding support, because it's not a species that's readily charismatic unless you know and hear enough about it. And it's also not a species that's showing sort of a catastrophic or a very evident decline. It's silently going away in the background. And it becomes very difficult to garner funding support for a species of that sort. And the third part of it is education. So I realized as a scientist that if you're not able to explain what you do in science to your mom, then your science is pretty much useless. You need to take it further. You need to bridge the gap between the science and the society so that more people are part of this venture. So I started cartooning and started using cartoons on dholes as a tool in my endeavor to conserve the species. So here you can see how the person does not know what a dhole is, and the dhole is really upset. They've also had this tag of being a vermin for a very long time as pests of the jungle. So a little bit of image remaking is required. And there is also some information available there in scientific papers that need to be translated so that people know what kind of research and what kind of conservation needs to be done in what landscapes. For example, in the Western Ghats and in central India, there's not much conflict with dholes, but in Northeast India, there is. It's because of livestock depredation that works differently in these three landscapes. And this is really important as well. So with all of this, what I want to say is that the dhole has somewhat remained out of focus for a very long time, living in the shadow of the tiger, although they share the same landscapes across much of their range. It's really time that we sort of shift the focus, consider the dhole as one of the important predator species in these tropical forests. But so far it has managed, so which is why I call them the underdogs of the tropical forests, because they have survived. In a country with 1.3 billion people, the dhole has managed to survive. But going forward, it will require sort of facilitation from us as conservationists and wildlife biologists to move to the next century. So with that, I invite all of you to join the pack. Help me create a constituency of conservationists to save the dhole. It's really important that you do this at this point, because these are the species that we find out they went extinct from an area only after they go extinct, and that's a really sad and frustrating place to be in. So how can you support this effort? You can do it in many ways. The first thing is to tell more people about the dhole, spread messages about the dhole, share it on social media. So more people know about it, then we have more people on our team to conserve the dhole. Second, you can support me financially in my projects or in the projects that I'm collaboratively working on with the IUCN Dhole Working Group and the Canid Specialist Group, so that there's a more global approach. Or you could also support my endeavor in having a lot of fund support for the next generation of wildlife biologists in India and in across dhole range countries to sort of come together and pick this species because there is enough support for their work in their countries. And you could also go check out my cartoons in my stall as well, stall number 33. Yeah, and then hopefully that has convinced you into liking the dhole as much as I have. I thank all of these photographers for the wonderful images that you saw during my presentation. I thank Wildlife Conservation Society India and University of Florida. And last but not least, I wish I had the words to express the kind of admiration, reverence, excitement that this species brings out in me. And I hope my talk has inspired at least a little bit of that in you guys. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Arjun. We've got a couple minutes for Q&A, and I see a hand already up here.
I have a question.
Sorry? Oh. Okay. And then you go next.
For the first time I saw Dhole, there were some in some sanctuary. It was in Ohio, in the wild somewhere, but there was a sign that I read, and I was wondering if you think you would get any to be brought to a sanctuary, like if it would help, breeding them at the sanctuary, could it become a breeding hole?
Yeah, so the question was basically whether can we use a breeding facility in some zoo or a sanctuary and then use that as a tool to sort of put them back in the wild, perhaps. So it's because they're very social, those are very social animals, it's extremely difficult to breed them in captivity. So there are a lot of zoos that have dholes, but very few of them have success in breeding them. So that is an issue, but the first step, as I would say it, is to at least conserve whatever we still have in the wild, and then make sure that the threats are removed, and then think about putting the dhole back in areas where they once occurred.
All right, a question over here.
Why have dholes received so much hate in the past?
So a lot of it can be traced back to the British colonies because they were all prolific hunters in most of the areas where they colonized. India had really huge numbers of wildlife, but the dhole was neither a game species like the deer that they hunted for either meat or the antlers, neither was it a trophy species like the tiger or the lion that they could sort of show off. So this was just like a pest because of that. I mean, but they were also looking at them as animals that were depleting prey populations, prey being the deer, and the hunters wanted the deer to survive. So they kept thinking that these animals are eliminating what we want to hunt for meat and trophy. So these are the pests.
Two questions. You mentioned that they have dholes in northeast India, so I assume that they have them in Kaziranga National Park?
No, much further up north.
Okay. And secondly, is there any danger, as with the Ethiopian wolves, of the dholes hybridizing with domestic dogs, as far as they know right now?
Those, we don't know of any hybridization because we think they have a very, very strong social structure, much more than that of the Ethiopian wolf. It's probably because of that that it's unable to sort of hybridize, which is a good thing for us. We have a lot of dogs. We have decent enough number of dholes. We don't want them to hybridize and create a new issue. So far, we haven't had any information on hybridized individuals now.
Okay, last question up here, and then we'll close.
It looked like the island in Indonesia that they were on was Sumatra.
Yeah.
And I know from living in Indonesia, like dogs are looked really poorly upon. Do you know how they're faring in Indonesia?
So right now we think that Java, I'm not very sure, but and then in Baluran National Park, we know that there are a couple of packs, and there are some colleagues from my network of people who are trying to work with them right now. But again, like it's one of the countries where it's likely going to disappear very soon. It's very unfortunate, but that's what it is.
All right. Thank you so much, Arjun.
Thank you all very much.
On en fait et être aussi en accord avec soi-même.
Le bonheur pour moi, c'est d'avoir ma famille à côté de moi, mon père, ma mère.
Thiago Brava, violão, uma catuaba e o Jorge. Fala comigo! Bora, Thiagão! Assim, ó. Me desculpe vir aqui desse jeito. Me perdoe o traje de maloqueiro, de camisa larga e boné pra trás, bem na hora da novela que a senhora gosta mais. Faz 3 dias que eu não durmo direito. Sua filha me deixou desse jeito, e o que ela mais fala é que a senhora é brava. Mas hoje eu não vou aceitar levar um não pra casa. Dona Maria, deixa eu namorar a sua filha. Vai me desculpando a ousadia, essa menina é um desenho no céu. Dona Maria, deixa eu namorar a sua filha. Vai me desculpando a ousadia, Essa menina é um desenho no céu que Deus pintou e jogou fora o pincel.
Só agora, Thiagão.
É tu, Jorge, vá!
Bora, Dona Maria.
Segura o tubiá!
Goiás.
Me desculpa vir aqui desse jeito, me perdoa o traje de maloqueiro, de camisa larga e boné pra trás, bem na hora da novela que a senhora gosta mais. Faz 3 dias que eu não durmo direito, sua filha me deixou desse jeito, e o que ela mais fala é que a senhora é brava. Mas hoje eu não vou aceitar levar um não pra casa. Dona Maria, deixa eu namorar a sua filha, vai me desculpando a ousadia, essa menina é um desenho no céu. Oh, Dona Maria, deixa eu namorar a sua filha, vai me desculpando a ousadia, essa menina é um presente no céu que Deus pintou e jogou fora o pincel. Uá! Dona Maria, deixa eu namorar a sua filha, vai me desculpando a ousadia, essa menina é um desenho do céu. Vai, Jorge! Oh, Dona Maria, deixa eu namorar a sua filha, vai me desculpando a ousadia, essa menina é um desenho do céu que Deus pintou e jogou fora o pincel.
Aê!
Valeu, Jorge.
Valeu, cara.
Agora foi,
O que
papai.
você fez com a Dona Maria pra ela estar com essa
Deixa eu
vida
namorar
toda?
sua filha, Dona Maria. Fala comigo.
Jorge Thiago Bravo.
É nóis. Valeu, papai.
Vai começar o show das estrelas agora na pista. É o show da disputa final. É agora que o bicho vai pegar, meu povo.
Diferente não, estranho.
Tem que respeitar a empresa, menino.
Tava pensando em desistir da minha profissão, trocar o meu quarto de milha por qualquer carrão, largar a bota, a espora e também minha cela, usar tênis, bermuda, jeans e cinto sem fivela. Mas quando eu pensei vaquejada e derruba boi, eu desisto de tudo e deixo pra depois. A minha vida é assim, eu não quero outra. Aperta o ventre na pista, aciona o modo capa louca e manda boi, abra a porteira, solta o touro, o vaqueiro tá preparado. Manda boi, pode ser 25 arrogo, meu cavalo é de gado, eu disse manda. Olha que manda boi, abra a porteira, solta o touro, o vaqueiro tá preparado. Manda boi, pode ser 25 arrogo, meu cavalo é de gado.
É forró que tu quer? Pois toma.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'll give everyone a moment to take your seats. My name is Susan Jana, and I'm the chairman of the board of Cheetah Conservation Fund. I know you've had a long and awesome day. We're going to continue that a little bit longer. Not that long ago, I was sitting where you are sitting, attending Expo and listening to the amazing conservationists at Expo. And I went to a lot of the lectures, just like you did. And when I attended Lori's lecture, I was just absolutely entranced and amazed by the kind of work that CCF does. Shortly after that, I hosted a fundraiser for CCF. Then I was asked to join the board of directors, and I was elected as chairman of the board earlier this year. You have an amazing chance to connect with conservationists and get involved and follow your passions, and that's what I did, and I hope all of you are doing the same thing. I've had the amazing privilege of working with Lori closely for the last couple of years. Those of us who work closely with her all joke that she never sleeps. I know that for a fact. She has stayed with me. And that it takes about 10 of us to even try to keep up with her. I once asked her in a moment of absolute exhaustion, mine, not hers, Lori, how do you do it? And her answer really struck me. She said, I have to do it to save the cheetah. There is no person on the face of this earth who is more dedicated to ensuring that the cheetah wins its race against extinction Would you please help me welcome Dr. Lori Marker?
That was nice. Well, I sleep on planes. It's always good. Thank you all for being here. I'm the last talk of the evening, and so it was cheetahs or elephants, so you guys are the cat folk, and thank you. And, we all do have to run fast. So cheetahs are the most amazing animal on the face of the earth, and I'm very partial to them, and I know that there's a number of the people here in the room who have been not only interns with us, worked at the Cheetah Conservation Fund, and those of you who are here love the cheetah too. So thank you. They are special, they need a lot of help, and I'll try to tell you about some of the work that we're doing to try to help cheetahs. Now, this was supposed to work. Do I point it your way, or do I? Oh, I'm pushing that, the green one. That didn't push. But I can tell you about cheetahs. Do you think it's working or not? I'm also good at saying next, but beyond that, there's a lot of next. Cheetahs are the fastest land animal. I mean, just look at that. Every part about the cheetah is built for speed. Small head, aerodynamic body, just their eyes that can see a couple miles away without binoculars. Those tear marks which run down from their eyes help them focus and see what they're looking at. And I think in conservation today, focus is really important. And so the cheetah actually has taught me a lot about what I'd say target, focus, work hard, and keep going. They're just lovely. However, their life is hard. A mother can have up to 6 cubs, 4 to 5 are average. In many areas where they're found, we have about a 90% infant mortality. The female is raising the cubs on her own. She's out hunting constantly. The cubs are staying. They start following their mom at about 6 weeks. Mother's got a small home range, goes into a larger home range, till at the time when they are leaving her at about 18 to 22 months of age, they have a home range that could be up to 1,000 square miles. So they've got one of the largest ranges of any animal on the face of the earth. And that's why we have so much to do to try to take care of them. They're an apex predator. They're at the top. They maintain the grasslands. They weed out the old and the sick and the weak and the young, and they keep all of our wildlife healthy. Aren't cheetahs great? Cheetah males live together their whole life. They're called a coalition, and so a female will actually cover multiple males' home ranges as she's out there teaching her cubs where to live. And the mate that she might have, and female cheetahs actually have mate choice. They will select the mate and hopefully a couple years later go back and rebreed. That's if he's still around. But that male might have the best range. That's why she goes there, where there's the best food and the best water to care for and raise her young as well. To give you an idea where cheetahs live, and this map is a very important map. The brown is where they used to live. The orange is where they're living today. There's less than 7,500 cheetahs found on the earth. Most of them are found outside of protected areas, and so throughout my talk, I'm going to refer to farmers, livestock farmers. Throughout the areas where cheetahs are found, they're living in some of the most arid landscapes in all of the world. I live in southern Africa, in Namibia, which is where our flag is, and between Namibia and Botswana, and I think Rebecca is here from Cheetah Conservation Botswana, we have 50% of the world's population, which still is not that many, which is maybe around 4,000 individuals. Most of the populations, there are 31, about 20 of them are less than 100 individuals. It's really scary out there dealing with the cheetah issues that we are dealing with. A little bit about me. I grew up on the back of a horse. I still ride my horse every single day. Peter was one of our interns. He rode with me every day for 6 months when he was there. Anybody who comes over can go riding. But how did I end up over in Africa? I grew up with dogs and goats. We still have a lot of dogs and goats. And many of you might have met our Anatolian Shepherd guarding dog who's here, is going to come up in a few minutes longer. But I found myself in the early 70s at a wildlife park where I took care of the animals in the veterinary clinic. I raised over 200 species of animals. However, what caught my eye was the cheetah. I asked people, everyone around the world, tell me what you know about the cheetah. And people would write back to me and they'd say, when you find out something about the cheetah, let us know. They don't breed in captivity. We're losing them in the wild. And they don't live very long in captivity also. So from my early days in the 1970s, I helped develop kind of the global world, cheetah world, because nobody knew anything about them. And I said, well, when I find out, I'll let you know. And we did write a textbook just recently, and it just came out, which is anything you'd want to know about the cheetah, but you were afraid to ask. I took one of the cheetahs to Namibia, and that's how I ended up doing what I do today. I had no idea that I was going to be the one picked to go out there and try to figure out what it was going to take to save the cheetah. This is Kayam, and I had an opportunity of raising her whole life, 10 years, but when she was about a year old, my job was to take her to Namibia, Africa, which was a war-torn country at that point in time, trying to get its independence from South Africa, and my job was to find out how you teach a cheetah how to hunt. Because zoos were trying to breed animals, and we thought we could just take the animals and put them back out in the wild. Well, first you have to have a wild, and then there has to have a place where the animals can live. And what I found when I ended up in Namibia was that there was conflict everywhere. The farmers were killing cheetahs 800 and 900 a year. They thought that I was crazy. They were catching them in capture cages. Was it because they were actually catching their livestock? Or was it a perceived threat? And what we found over the years, it's more perceived than actual, but even with that, we as humans kill predators. And that goes back for thousands and thousands of years because we're afraid of predators. And so what the Namibian farmers said, you know, if you see a cheetah, kill it. That goes along with leopards, lions, anything that is predator, wild dogs, jackals, and so I wanted to do something to stop that. So, long story short, I went from Oregon, the wildlife safari where I worked, to the Smithsonian's National Zoo, where my research continued there on cheetahs, and ended up at Namibia's independence, moving to Namibia and set up the Cheetah Conservation Fund. We're the largest cheetah organization in the world, and we are only a handful of us, and most of the people that work on cheetahs have all been kids of ours, and I'm very proud of our ongoing capacity building throughout all of Africa. We're an open-to-the-public research center and an education center. We're a sanctuary where we do have orphan cheetahs. We've got a veterinary clinic, a genetics laboratory, which I'll talk a little bit more about, but we're also on 100,000 acres of land. We are a reserve as well as a model farm. So my background did come with growing up with animals. And when you talk to a farmer and say, I love cheetahs, and then the farmer says, yeah, well, I love my livestock, I can say, well, I love my livestock too. I love my goats. I used to be a goat judge here in the United States. Not many people can say that. So we are a model farm with goats, sheep, cattle, and with that, we have an integrated system, a part of the Greater Waterberg landscape, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about. But at our center, we have livestock guarding dogs, we have a goat dairy now, and we also do a lot of habitat restoration. So Namibia is a special country. Namibia is about 2.5 times the size of California. It's very arid, like you all are. We have about 2.5 million people, but all that we have is wildlife on our land with our livestock. So the green are our national parks, which are about 19% of the country. They're big deserts alongside of the Atlantic Ocean. The brown are communal conservancies, which would be similar to what we would call here maybe Indian reservations. And at pre-apartheid times, our communities were split up and put into these different areas. And then there is the center of the country, which are the commercial farmlands, and that's primarily where cheetahs live. Those are all conservancies, the brown and the dots in the middle. Now, we are based over around the Waterberg Plateau Park. The Waterberg is a national park I'll talk more about. And these are our 100,000 acres of land. And I'm pointing out right now, all of this land actually came to us through multiple people's understanding that buy land, they're not making it anymore. Namibia is able to buy land, and we've just been given an opportunity to fill in our land here with 2 more pieces of land that we're trying to find funding for right now. That's about 30,000 acres that we're trying to purchase at this point. In Namibia, when we talk about conservancies, our animals are free range, and these are primarily the diet that the cheetah has. They love kudu, calves. Coalitions can hunt larger kudu. That's a kudu right there. Cheetahs eat hartebeest and oryx and the young of them, steenbok, duiker, warthog, rabbits or hare. And so they have a varied diet, but their prey range has to be at about the size that they can catch because they are small. In Namibia, though, our wildlife is primarily free range, not with these high fences. And that's something that we try to promote through our conservancy initiatives, that the communities manage the wildlife cooperatively and together within our conservancy lands. So what we try to do is to address these 3 points. Predation. So how often, oftentimes predation is because people aren't managing their livestock properly. So we look at livestock management. And then habitat destruction. As our populations continue to grow, our rangelands are becoming overgrazed by the livestock on the land, and very degraded land does not allow for more grass, for more wildlife. There's no wildlife, no cheetahs, and so all of this is circular. And then we're now addressing issues around the illegal wildlife trade of our young cubs, as well as parts of cheetahs that are being sold into these issues. We do a lot of education, and our motto is save the cheetah and change the world. And that's what I think that we're doing from within to without. We have dealt with over 550,000 school kids, and I didn't know what I was doing when I started. Well, I did, but I had no idea of the impact it made. That today, almost 30 years later, so many people have gone through our education programs. People have been interns with us that are now the Minister of Environment and Tourism. Most of the ministry staff has interned at CCF. So the impact of education, I cannot even tell you how important it is. We have international students that are with us constantly. We have about 20,000 school kids that we go out and teach every year, as well as about 1,000 kids that come to us from Namibia and just stay at our center to learn more about the cheetah. This past year, we had a very interesting project, which we partnered up with the Colorado State University in a conference that's called Pathways. And Pathways Africa, it's the first time that this conference on human dimensions, on human-wildlife conflict, but the human dimensions of wildlife was held outside of America. And I love this project because Pathways and Colorado State, the training program before the conference was what I was interested in. We brought 45 people from throughout Africa to spend 3 days in training with many of the most, or the best lecturers around human-wildlife conflict and the human dimensions. And the professors are all in there. And it was just so exciting. And then we had over 200 people that came to the conference in Namibia at Pathways. And we partnered with our colleagues from the Namibia Nature Foundation, the Large Carnivore Management Association, and then obviously our CCF. And this here is a picture of our interns that from Namibia that actually put on the conference for all of the 200 people that came internationally. And it was a great, great, great opportunity. After the conference, we had about another week-long training with our colleagues from Kenya and Algeria, as well as from Somaliland. Somaliland is where we have a lot of illegal wildlife trafficking going. And I'm bringing this picture up right now. I'm going to tell you a little bit more. But these two guys came to it. They're the directors of wildlife of Somaliland. And this little cub that I'll tell you a little bit more about also, her name's light as a feather. About a month ago, I was in Somaliland and spent 2 weeks saving her life, and she had been confiscated as a tiny cub and almost didn't make it. There were 2 cubs, one didn't, and she did. But these guys actually put the people in jail. That we had gotten 8 cats that time in August, and it was great. But I just want to say the amount of training is so important, and when you can partner together, it's really, really great. Just to give you an idea of where our research area is, and again, remember, Namibia is 2.5 times the size of California. The black are where we've gone door to door and talked to the farmers. The red are where we've captured cheetahs, collared them, taken blood tissues, opportunistic sampling, and the majority of these animals have gotten back out in the wild. We've been able to put over 600 cheetahs back out into the wild. And these are not ones that are babies that have come to us. These are animals that were able to go back out in the wild after being collared. Matt is one of our master's students who did his master's on some of the rewilding work that we've done that I'll talk a little bit more about as well. We do and are a science-based organization, and from that, the work that we do is every animal, we want to know more about it. We weigh it, measure it, take blood samples, tissue samples for our genetics lab to look at diseases, to look at everything that we can to understand more about the cheetah. We've worked on over 850 animals. We've got a huge database that goes into our liquid nitrogen tanks. We bank and freeze sperm on every wild male cheetah there is for the future. And so all of this is just very, very important for the work that we do. We not only work from Namibia, but we train people from throughout all of Africa to conduct this work too. Our research shows how cheetahs are living, and they've got home ranges that are, again, larger than any other of the carnivore species except that of the wild dogs, about 800 square miles. And they live in a very low density, and we get that information from our camera traps, where we find between 2 and 12 cheetahs per 500 square miles. So this is a lot of the baseline research that we're involved in. I don't know what I did. I think I did something bad. There we go. We do have a sanctuary, and some people think, oh, you're a cheetah group. No, all you have is cheetah babies at our place. Well, we don't. We do all this other work, but we end up having cheetah orphans that come to us. Today we have 33 at the center, and it seems like we put some out and we bring others in. And again, when we have these animals, 33 of them right now, each one of these cheetahs costs us about $5,000 just to take care of. And so if anyone wants to help sponsor one of our orphan cheetahs, you're welcome to. We're not allowed to breed cheetahs in captivity, but our cheetahs are part of our ongoing research. Again, looking at diseases, reproductive work, but also our reintroduction work as well. Kate, put your hand up over there, Kate. Kate was one of our interns and then cheetah keeper for about 3 years and worked actively with us. Then she went off and got her master's degree and is still very involved in conservation, but took care of a lot of these animals. I want to bring you into the horrible world of illegal wildlife trafficking. We know that there's a lot of parts going on in the southern parts of Africa where we've got about 4,000 animals. We deal with moody markets. The people are out there killing cheetahs and leopards, and you've got, I don't know, feet and claws and teeth, but also capes of cheetahs that we don't really know where they're all coming from, but they can't be coming from just South Africa. Up in East Africa, where we have a population of about 1,600 individuals, this is where the pet trade is going. Cats are being caught from northern Kenya, Ethiopia, and Somalia and Somaliland, and they are crated. We get many of them, and then from there they end up over in the Middle East, where people think that they should be pets. We've been able to track down a lot of what the route looks like. The red is where we have gotten animals confiscated. The green is now where, through some censusing, we're trying to find out that there are cheetahs out in these areas. It's very, very dangerous. It's not the place that you can go out and just go. The normal surveys that we will do, we are training now many people from the universities to try to get out there on the ground because, again, we can't go out there. We look to European, and it is not the safest place in the world. Our big issues are the fact that we can't transport animals once they're in captivity if they get caught. We can't also transport the blood and tissues, so even trying to find out where they're coming from, who's related to who, has become a challenge. We actually do this by collecting scat or poop. This is our team right now that, together with the last confiscation, we were all together. Neju is the one who's taking care of the animals. Gunther is from GIZ, which is kind of like USAID. We are using his facilities and a lot of his staff to help do this. Patricia is our specialist in human-wildlife conflict. She's just been back in Russia to the last standing committee meeting for CITES, where, again, the cheetah illegal trafficking is very strongly being recognized, and she's been in the UK right now, where there's been a recent meeting this week on illegal wildlife trafficking. But these cats, we've needed to where are we going to put them? How are they going to be housed? And that's become a bit of a problem. But that is the team that we've been working with. These are the cats that we just were able to save in August, and they have names, so you can kind of get an idea of who they are. Again, this is light as a feather. And some of these cats, when they came in from these cages, they couldn't walk because they'd been in transit for such a long period of time. We are trying to find out a lot more about the population of cheetahs, and we do this through blood samples, tissue samples, through getting scat samples, and we've got a great genetics laboratory and a team spirit working together. We're working with our partners from many of the different range countries, doing a lot with the Kenya population to see how it's linking in again with a lot of this illegal wildlife trafficking. We use poop, black gold. Some of you have heard a little bit about the black gold and scat dogs. We do much of the same. We have, these are our two dogs, our two handlers. We're not only training dogs to find cheetah scat, but also to look at anti-poaching. And our dogs are active all the time. Right now, they're looking for a vehicle, just letting you know what some of our needs are, to try to get out there and do a lot more of this detection work. As the dogs are tracking, the green is what their work looks like, the red is where the handler is. The dogs are covering about twice the size area of what that of the handlers are. This is Finn, and he's recently retired from some of the younger dogs and their training. And what we find is that if we do have a question, we bring the scat back to Finn, and Finn's always the one who's willing to answer the question on whether it's a cheetah or not. We are just recently going into Angola to look at scat samples with colleagues up there, and our team of dog people are heading back to Angola at the end of this month for another month-long project overlapping that with the camera traps to find out more about not only the cheetahs but other carnivores in this area. What we find with the scat is we can extract it, and we've got gene sequencers at our lab, and we can actually tell individual animals that are different. And you can see that this fingerprint is different than these three. And so that's what we do when we get the scat, and we can find out much more about how cheetahs are living, more about population structure, more about where maybe some of these animals are coming from northern Kenya or from Ethiopia, or maybe being trafficked even from Botswana or Namibia. Our work really requires large landscapes, and so when we talk about the work that we're doing, it really deals with big, vast areas. And our research has gone into conservation, because research is good, but you really do need to have applied conservation, getting on the ground, working directly with the people. And our team of ecologists are very, very active. Mati has been a star here at WCN in many years. He's finishing his PhD. He was one of the young conservationists here, and WCN has helped support his work. Fabiano finished his PhD a few years ago. He's now at the University of Namibia and bringing us many of his students to continue off on the work that we're doing in a lot of the research that we're talking about. And then Aniki just joined us, and she's great. She joined us, and she lives in Ochivaranga, which is our local town. She came in as a school child. She came to CCF and she said, I think this is what I'm interested in. She went off, got her undergraduate, her master's degree, and now she's running all of our work with our education as well as our research there at CCF. So that's sort of the team that we work very actively with, and each one of them are just amazing. The landscape that we're working in closest right to CCF is here's the Waterberg National Park. It looks like this. It's an upwelling where we've got some of the country's most endangered species. The black rhinos are up there. Our land goes to the top of the Waterberg, and we've got a very large footprint there. But we're working out here in the communities where we've got about 23,000 people that we're working very closely with. where we also have cheetahs and wild dogs. And you've heard that the wild dogs are also one of the most critically endangered. Well, we're also in the wild dog world these days as well. From our work that we're involved in, we've got camera traps out. We're working actively with the communities. We've got this grid through the Waterberg, this whole area. It's huge. We've spent the whole year gridding this, camera trapping it. We're doing the wet and the dry season, and from that, we're coming up with an idea of what the biodiversity is within the whole area. But it's also allowing us to do a lot of community work and asking the communities about what's out there. And so we get the pictures of some of these animals that are on the ground, and then through questionnaires, we're understanding how often they're seeing the predators, where they're seeing them. You can see that the jackal they see about every day. They hate jackals. And they see wild dogs hardly ever, but they kill lots and lots of wild dogs, even though they don't see them. They burn out dens and they poison them. So it's a real problem, which is why we've been involved there in the wild dogs. We do training, which is called Future Farmers of Africa, and we've done lots of great work. We're now working with this is can go backwards here, a new collar that we're working on. It's called an E-Shepherd collar. It emits a very high sound and a flashing light. You put 1 per 10 of your goats, and we're experimenting on this to find out how successful something like the e-collar can be. You can't have them where you've got livestock guarding dogs because the emission of this high-pitched noise keeps predators away. So we've got livestock guarding dogs in some areas, and we've got e-shepherd collars in other areas. In other areas, we've got lights on fences. And so it's a very interesting component. The Future Farmers of Africa, we've trained over 5,000 farmers in our training programs. This was a group from the University of Namibia that just came in with we partnered with a group from Oklahoma State University, which is one of the best goat vet universities than any place else in the world, believe it or not. And from our University of Namibia training course, they all came and participated in this training program with us. We breed dairy goats also, and we actually make goat milk, cheese, and ice cream. It's wonderful. Just with our livestock guarding dogs, many people have heard about them. We've bred and placed over 650. This year we will breed and place about 50 puppies on their own. And they grow up with the flock. They grow up from the time they're about 8 weeks old. We spay, we neuter them, and then we place them with farmers, and then work constantly with the farmers throughout. We see between 80 to 100% decline of livestock loss when we've got farmers working with the dogs. And we not only are saving cheetahs, but all the other predators. So as cheetah people, we love a healthy ecosystem, and we like all predators. We've started a One Health program. This is Robin, and she's one of our veterinarians. And we've worked with a variety of other vets, from Kathy Gervais, another veterinarian, great Monique from the Netherlands, who are out on the ground. Right now, we've got a matching grant to have a mobile clinic. So we're working out of the back of our truck. We need the truck a little bit bigger, a little bit more contained. There's Kathy. And that we can actually do rabies vaccines, distemper vaccines, and also spay and neuter. Because the area that we're working in is where all of the wild dogs are. And so these are where our main conflict zones are, and this is where we are focusing most of our energies. So 2 years ago, we ended up with our first puppies. The farmers had before burned them out, killed them, and not told anybody. And the ministry couldn't get any information. And by going in there, spending a lot of time with the people, all of a sudden, oh, shoot, we ended up with 2 puppies. A few weeks later, we ended up with another 7 puppies. We blended them together. We just split them out, so we've got 2 release dog packs. Then this year in June, we ended up with another 9 puppies. Meredith, where are you? Put your hand up. Meredith was one of our interns who helped take care of those puppies. And they are now together with the bigger uncles, who is Zebra Legs and White Collar, that Kathy and I raised last year. They're great uncles, but it looks like we are probably going to be on the dog circuit for some time. We've just developed a 20-acre dog pen for them to go into. From there, they're going to go into another rewilding area, and we believe that we'll be able to actually restock wild dogs in Namibia, and our government is very eager to work with us because of the success that we've had with our rewilding programs with our cheetahs, which is different than the 600 and some 800 that we put back out into the wild. These are orphan cats that have come to us, not bottle-raised babies. We end up with cats that are 6 months old, 8 months old. They hate us. They're perfect candidates for rewilding, where they can go back out into the wild. And Eli's in the middle there. Eli also was an intern first. He came back as staff. He is now in charge of our rewilding program. And from that, we've got 8 cats that are ready to go back out into the wild. We use satellite collars, and we're trying to get more of those to put out some of these cats. We put one out a couple days ago of 8. We've got 3 more that are ready to go out in the next few days, and then we've got another 4 that are ready to go out probably in about another month. So this is how our rewilding works. You don't just let them out and say goodbye. We actually take them out, have to take care of them, make sure that they're hunting and feeding properly, and with that, the supplemental feeding is critical. We find that females, actually after about 2 weeks, are pretty much on their own. Males have a harder time and usually like to be a little bit supplementally fed for like a month or so longer. So we invest our time and energies more in the females in many senses than the males. But this year we are putting out 4 males along with the 4 females. So a little update on our biomass program. We do habitat restoration. Our country is full of thick thorn bushes. People have commented about what's going on with climate change. Climate change is a problem. We have desertification. Where the cheetah lives is arid lands everywhere. You end up with arid land, no grass, human populations, everybody having goats and sheep and cattle. You end up with an overgrazed land. It either becomes a desert or it becomes where you end up with a thickened thorn bush. What we've had is thickened thorn bush. So we've got an area the size about of California that is so thickly thorn bushed, it used to look like this about 35 years ago. It's now so thick you can hardly penetrate it. And if you've been to Africa and you know what these thorns are like, they're kind of miserable. So we developed a habitat restoration program. It's going well. We put about 40 people to work. We chip the bush that we've harvested, we chop it up, we make a fuel log, which is called bush block, and we're looking at this fuel log going eventually into biomass energy. So we're looking at a biomass gasifier that can actually produce electricity. It could be used in many of the small villages around Africa where most of the people, I think over 65% of the people in Africa have no electricity. So it's one of the visions that we have for the future. We've developed what's called the Biomass Technology Center. Our main campus is down over here, and we're now also involved in, we've got solar panels up, and we are all off the grid, but it's part of one of the work projects that we're involved in. And my partner, Bruce Brewer, and Bruce, put your hand up, he's also our general manager, is dealing with all of our biomass program. Community is very important. As you've been out here and you look at all these lovely crafts that people from throughout the world are making for all of you. But this puts us all, what we do, I can tell you all day about cheetahs. And these ladies make these crafts, and if you can empower and give jobs to women, it's more important than men, because the women are actually very important, and if they have their own money, then they're probably not going to go out and have to get pregnant and have more kids and figure out how to take care of a whole bunch of problems around living in a developing world. So we support a lot of women's groups, and we work very actively with them, and we're trying to actually promote these kinds of crafts and our partners in other cheetah areas to try to get our crafts in many of the local zoo gift shops and museums here in the United States, because then it actually connects us back to the animals and the people who are living on the land with these animals. This is the book that we've just come out with. It is called Cheetahs, Their Biology and Conservation, and it's a 40-book chapter with over 160 authors. Rebecca was one of the co-authors here. Kate was a co-author. Don't know if there's other co-authors, but our team of cheetah people we're very, very proud of this. Our co-editors, myself and Ann Schmidt-Kunzel, who's the head of our genetics laboratory and animal health, and then Lorraine Boast, who is a research associate with Cheetah Conservation Botswana, showing together how important we as a small group of cheetah people are working together, and we want everyone to know what we're doing everywhere to try to save the cheetah. It's a model for all the predator work, I think, everywhere, and we're very proud of it. Come visit us, please. You're welcome. Namibia is a wonderful country. You can see some of our orphan cheetahs. They're not pets. You can't touch them, but they're out in big compounds. We have one of the most beautiful views in the world, the vista of the Waterberg Plateau behind us. We have just set up a new lodge, which is called Cheetah View, down here, and we've got our Babson House, which is 3 bedrooms and 5. The lodge is 5 rooms, and so we do welcome people to come over. But you can also come over and be a volunteer, a young volunteer or an older volunteer. Peter's right here. Peter came and, as I said 6 months with us. Wilson was there too. Put your hand up. How many of our people here have been volunteers with us? If I actually look around, if you can see, we've got a great family of people who have been a part of us. So we do welcome you to come and work with us. And this is our professional team. We've got about 40 people who are our ecologists and our veterinarians and geneticists and educators, all working together to try to save the cheetah not only in Namibia, but throughout the range. And we work together everywhere the cheetah is, and we will not let the cheetah go without a very big fight. So. I really want to thank all of you because we couldn't do this without your support. And back in the day, a long time ago, CCF, I think, was one of the beginnings of WCN. And together, we are one of the largest partners, but we are making a difference. And again, I want to thank all of you for spending the entire day with all of our great colleagues out on the front line, helping save all of the different species. And it takes a village to do everything that we do. Thank you very, very, very much.
Thank you, Lori, and thank you to all of you for staying here. This is such a unique opportunity to have Lori here, and I know we've gone a little bit over time, but I don't want to rob you or rob Lori from the opportunity to ask a few questions. So if you don't mind staying for a few more minutes, we'll take 1 or 2 questions from the audience. There's one right here.
Yes. One here.
What are your requirements to be a volunteer?
Well, believe it or not, we put everyone to work. So we look at what you are and what you want to do, and we can put you in. But a lot of our work really revolves around animal care, going out and picking up camera trap photos, looking at those photos, helping with everything that we do. So, I mean, I never can tell you exactly what happens every day, but I know we wake up and we take care of our animals. And from that, again, there's just loads and loads of stuff that goes on. I would encourage you to actually talk with a few of our volunteers and go on our website, cheetah.org, and actually learn about what volunteers can do. And it's not that if you're just a student, we take older volunteers. Walt, I don't know how many times you've been over with us, 5 times. And so we like people of all ages, and boys and girls, and we all work hard together.
Thank you. I see a question in the back.
Thank you so much for your work. I noticed on the map of the cheetahs range that there's still somewhat of a substantial population of them in Iran. Do you know anything about the conservation efforts there? And regardless of our ugly administration, are there any efforts to try to work with the Iranian government to help preserve their cheetah populations?
Well, we know a lot about what's going on there. There's only about 50 cheetahs there, and we've been working together with our Iranian colleagues for about 15 years. However, the population keeps going down. We've done a lot of training with many of the biologists at CCF. I've been to Iran a couple times and helped them. It's easier for them to come down to Namibia and be trained than it is for a bunch of Americans to go there. Right now, I'm probably not going to go there right away again, but we've been asked to put on another training program in Namibia, again in the very short, not too long from now. So we're hoping their problems are actually the prey base is so low. In many of the populations in northern Africa, the prey is more endangered than the cheetahs are. Well, the cheetahs are almost gone. And so those are the big issues that we're dealing with is lack of prey, but then within the reserves, all the goats are in there. And so the cheetah has nothing to eat. And in many areas, they're eating hare, a rabbit, and that's not a large enough diet for them to actually be able to feed not only themselves, but their young.
Okay. One last question, Derry.
So this was wonderful, Lori. If we can find our iPhones with a very small chip, why is such a large radio collar required?
Well, I wish I knew that. They've gotten smaller, believe it or not, but a lot of it has to do with the battery that's on them. And the batteries, the big size really is those batteries in there. And the batteries are what are taking up so much. So in some areas, maybe you've got solar panels, but the solar panels don't work on the collars. And I know that technology will get better, and we keep asking it to get better. We try to get the smallest, and the cheetah can only have the smallest size. And yet with that, it's more clunky than I'd like. So we are very selective in who we do collar. We've collared animals, for about 20 years. However, the collars that we're putting on now are primarily for our animals that are rewilded, and we need to know where they are pretty much every second of the day.
So I want to thank Lori and all her colleagues for the pioneer work that you've been doing with cheetahs, for the inspiration you've given to all the conservationists. And I want to thank all of you for staying so long. You can follow up with Lori directly through her website, through our website, support all these conservationists, and have a great evening. Thank you.